I heard this statistic from someone the other day. I'm going to say it because it sounds pretty relevant. And it's like 98% of like the rest of a man's life, he's dealing with things from his childhood. I'm your host, Paul McCarran. And the whole thing with the process, it's the process of me gaining knowledge and gaining wisdom. My guests are going to provide the knowledge and the wisdom, and I'm doing work at the same time to gain knowledge and wisdom. Process of 2 to 3 years down the line, now I'm providing knowledge and wisdom along with the guests. Welcome to Process Podcast. Dude, the childhood is like part of things that you don't even remember, and subconsciously you're still trying to tweak them out. You're trying to work them out. And I think you're never going to fully be able to dive into all of it, but it's like the more you can reflect on growing up, the more you can, for me, it was like that proving people wrong, maybe middle school, high school. The more I could reflect on that, the more peace I could be at with like who I am and why I'm doing things, and be able to turn it to, oh man, my whole life I've been trying to prove people wrong. The only person I need to prove anything to, which I don't because he knows me more than I even know myself, is Jesus, and that's it.
Yeah, because I mean he's the judge of all and the overlooker and overseer of all. Yeah, and he understands everything we're going through and everything we're going to go through. Though he doesn't cause it, he does see it, he understands it, and he walked with us, so he knows what we struggle with. Yeah, and it's good. That's good.
Yeah, so I mean that's so cool. I don't think I've met anyone that's been raised with that many siblings. So it's kind of cool to hear a little insight into growing up like that. So what's your oldest brother, sister, and then youngest? Are you the youngest?
No, I'm fourth from the bottom. My youngest sibling is my little brother Derek. He's a little over 20 now. And my oldest sibling is my sister Anita. She's in 60s now, I believe. Yeah, 60s. Oh my
gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That isn't. So you're wow.
Yeah, upper 50s, upper 60s, somewhere in that range. It's insane. Like,
do you feel like closeness to the brothers and sisters that are that much older?
Okay. So this is the part I think is interesting, and I think all of them would agree with this. It is 15 of us. Do you have 15 friends? Like friends.
Barely.
Right.
Like barely.
Right. 15 people you're close with. You and I have a good relationship. We're building that. But like to have 15 deep relationships is like a blessing. Like you're basically setting a record. So it's the same thing with my brothers and sisters. I don't have a close relationship with all of them. I know all of them to some degree, but I don't have a close relationship to all of them. Yeah. And they also have a bunch of kids too. And a lot of them are more closer to my age, but I'm close with a few of them, and some of them, I know I can call all of them if I need them. And I hope that they know they can call me too. But it's not, like if I go home for Christmas, I'm not sitting down with every single person talking to them for hours.
There just isn't time.
There's not enough time.
That's what it comes down to is like, with like the question, do you have 15 people? It's like, I literally can't develop 15 intentional deep relationships. I can't.
And I think that's one of the biggest struggles today though. And I'm still navigating this, and I don't know if I'll ever come to an arrival on it, is social media is a very great vehicle to build relationships.
How deep can they go?
Additionally, while building in-person relationships with the people you're living around. Because if I lived in a smaller city, like if I lived back at home in Ohio, it would be a little different because there's not as many people moving there. There's not as many shifting pieces. Even if I go to a different gym, I guess I would meet some new people, but it's not the same. In Tampa, it's very different. There's different people coming to the same gym you go to literally every day. Yeah. And you're building new relationships. If you go out, you're going to meet someone new, right? And I wear the Man of God shirts I wear the whole strength shirts that I wear now because it starts relationships with other Christians or curiosity for someone who doesn't walk with Jesus. I'm continually meeting people while also growing a social media platform, and people are wanting to get to know me. They'll DM me and try to get to know me in that way. And it's like, it's difficult because it's like, I don't have the time or the mental bandwidth to actually be able to get to know every single one of these people while also serving my 20, 30, 40 clients in my fitness business.
It's everything.
It is everything. Like it's too much at the same time, which is why we have to be intentional. We have to. You get to a certain point and you're forced to. You have a schedule now because you have to, right? I mean, if you didn't have a schedule, would you even get this done?
No. I mean, we've had this booked for probably a month and a half. And it's like, it works and so that's something, part of intentional my word this year. It's being intentional with who I lift with, being intentional with who I grab coffee with. Because if I do those things alone, like maybe that's the only time I can like squeeze in seeing someone.
Yes.
And it's not squeezing seeing someone like, oh, I gotta like squeeze in some time for them. It's like, no, that's a priority, is that relationship and being intentional to get to know this person.
Right.
So I'm gonna see if they want to lift and like have a lift with getting to know this person. So it's like for me, the lifts, it's not the season where I want to get jacked. It's like the season where I need to get and stay in shape, gotta maintain. But if I can do an hour of that with someone I can get close with, that's the goal. So I'm still working on like perfecting like when I make my schedule, how I make my schedule. But that's how I make sure like get those copies, or like me and you will probably hit a lift, I don't know, next few weeks or months. But that's going to be like me getting in on the schedule. Like it takes that, or else you won't prioritize it.
You won't do it. It'll get lost, and the relationship will literally burn to the ground.
Yeah.
Or you'll reach out to them 6 months later and try to rekindle, because now you realize, all right, I know I need to be more intentional with it. And they may not want to do that anymore.
And it's hard because it's like someone I might really be like caring to reach out to. It's a hard balance because I do really care about some people, but it's like, is it the number one intentional relationship? No. Sometimes it does get lost, and like a month or two pass and you're like, man, I got to rekindle this. Let's grab coffee. And you got to kind of catch it before it gets.
But I also think, and this is, some people might disagree, I think we have to be okay, at least for me, I know I have to be okay with not being able to build relationships with every person. I have to. Because I literally can't.
Literally.
Jesus is the only one who can have a relationship with every single person through the Holy Spirit. It's literally not possible. Pastors in big churches, our pastor was preaching this last weekend, and I go to Grace Family Church, and there's literally tens of thousands of people across the campuses. So one of the people were like, the pastor should go have lunch with every single person here. Like, why only have dinner with just
someone said this?
Yes. And the other pastor said, I did the calculation based on the amount of members that we have. If our pastor never did anything but had breakfast, lunch, and dinner with a different family at each meal for however long, it would literally take over 5 years for him to do it.
Literally.
And that's not including new members.
No. And my thing is like, same with like Pastor Aaron, like amazing. But can he talk to every single person? No. But he's serving the church in a different way to where he's reaching those thousands and thousands of people through his messages. And it's like, if you're fortunate, like, I don't know, Pastor Aaron's almost like a bigger than life for me. And it's like, he's just like, I don't know, he's just got like that like godly aura, he's just like someone who I desire to one day maybe sit down and have on a podcast or be on, and sit down and talk to.
100%.
But it's like, not everyone gets that chance. If God makes that path like open to me and somehow that happens, it's a blessing. But the odds are he cannot do that with almost anyone, because he's writing sermons, he's opening new churches, he's planting new churches, he's preaching at other churches, and people don't get that. And so I get that, and I get how valuable his time is, and like where his intentions and priorities lie. Plus he's got 5 kids, plus he's got a wife, which probably are second. It's the Lord, and then it's his family, and then everything else.
And it literally has to be that way. And his wife makes sacrifices that we can't even think of so he can serve the church.
100%.
Which is part of him serving God. It's not easy. It's not. And I think, and I mean, this, as you continue to build the process, as you continue to build in your walk with the Lord and help other people more intentionally, the relationships and the way that they rock and the way that they roll have to shift. I learned this from a mentor through, have you ever heard of Patrick Bet-David?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I learned it through him. He talks about this, and I think I'm still going through it now. It's like, in each season, as you grow and you elevate, your relationships and your dynamics with those relationships shift, and you have to be okay with it. It's not that you can't be friends with the people who were really deep in that season with you before. It's just the dynamic of your relationship has to shift. And if you try to bring that same relationship into the next season, that season will be the sacrifice.
Yeah.
You'll have to sacrifice it, because if me and you hung out every single, I don't know, Saturday, and then also Tuesday, and then also Thursday, because we went to the gym every Tuesday and Saturday or something like that, and on Thursday nights we had guys night or something like that, right? And then I get a new job, and or my business expands to some degree, and I'm going to be traveling more, and I try to maintain that while also going to school full time, and I start a relationship, and we're about to get married here soon and have kids.
Yeah.
And I try to maintain that every single day.
Something's going to fall. Yeah.
Something's going to fall. And you have to be able to shift those things to know, like, hey, I love you so much. I might be able to do a Tuesday once a month now.
Yeah.
And that Tuesday is going to be that time. That Tuesday is going to be
when you're there,
nice.
You be all there,
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing I've tried to is some people, they'll fill up their schedule, but when they're in that time, they're not there. It's like the biggest thing for me is when I'm there, being all there.
Yes.
Because like seeing someone once a month could make, like, you could get so much deeper of a relationship once a month with a person than if you saw them twice a week and you had those shallow friendships. For me, it was like college, going out and drinking every night. It's like, what are you getting? You're getting messed up. You're reflecting on things you don't remember. And it's like, that's where this conversation alone can go strides and strides further than like probably weeks or months of like relationships with people back when it's based on worldly things and like
it's a very intentional hangout. I was literally reading this in Proverbs last night or the night before. Was about this right here, and I can't remember exactly how it's worded, but the idea was that you don't want to spend too much time in your neighbor's house because then you get annoying. The relationship becomes somewhat watered down because the proximity there's no respect. There's healthy boundaries. And just seeing someone not as often. Same thing in a marriage. Having the ability to miss one another is important to some degree. Doing everything and all things together can become a bit of a blockade because you also need to have time with the Lord. And
alone. I think I've been fortunate that on my side of things, I've been alone pretty much all my life. And it's been a blessing from the Lord that I, something I had longed for. And, I want that relationship and that marriage eventually. But it was a blessing that I could grow and reflect on things that I think most people my age haven't had the chance to. And I've been able to like really dive into my life, dive into growing, and then obviously growing in my life with Christ for the last 8, 9, 10 months, and then being saved the last almost 2 years coming up in June. And it's like I've been able to do that reflection, and it's a blessing from the Lord that I didn't realize before. But being able to be alone for all that time, I've been able to do reflection that most people my age I feel like maybe haven't have done, or they can't be alone.
Agreed. And being alone that's the biggest struggle for me because it's part of my agape. I went from struggling to be alone to needing and realizing I need to be alone at times. And the interesting thing about me being alone and knowing how I recharge and how I understand if I'm putting out too much or putting in not enough is it's easily misunderstood from others when I explain to them. For example, this is a perfect example. We're talking about going on Thursday mornings, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff we just explained is the reason that I know I cannot go all the time. I just know.
Yeah, 100%. And I realize that too.
Right.
So I'm like, if you want to come, but also like when I invite people to things, I know if they can and they want to, like they're gonna, like for me, like I know you want to come.
Yes.
But if I know you also probably can't.
And that's part of the reason is like my another friend of mine that I go to church with, Alex. I'll be going to his wedding in March, which I can't wait. I'm so happy that he gave me. Obviously, it's a wedding, so you have to get a heads up.
Yeah.
He's doing a Bible study on Monday evenings, and I want to go. I want to. I think at some point I'm hoping I can make it, but I also have that on top of your Bible study. I also have 2 other friends who invited me to other Bible studies, and
it's a blessing, but
it is a blessing.
It's tough, and
and
sometimes it's like depending on your season, maybe the season could be 2 or 3 of these this season I'm going to be in them, but maybe the season you're in right now is like really I can't make any of them.
I can't.
My personal time with the Lord is where my season's being spent.
Exactly, and being able to communicate that has been not necessarily the easiest thing. 2. Because I don't want to burn bridges and I want to still be able to love them.
Yeah.
And I also have to understand that in me loving them, the best thing I can do is telling them the truth.
100%.
It's not that I don't want
and
the
right people will understand.
And they will. I do want to be there. I always do. I love people.
Yeah.
I do. But I'm not going to get school done. I'm not going to serve my clients. I'm not going to make the content that I need to. And you might think of that, well, you don't need to make content. That's my job.
Yeah, that's my job. That's literally
it's literally my job. It's also my ministry. The people that I help, if you watch the content enough, I'm not just talking to them to talk to them. I'm literally trying to pour into them so they can have more fruit in whatever direction they're trying to sow.
Yeah.
I met a guy yesterday at another gym I went to. I went to another crunch. His name's Ben. He's a bodybuilder. And he came across my content, even though I go to a different crunch. This is my first time at this one. He's like, yeah, man, I came across your content, man. And his wife was there. And she was like, oh, what does he do? She actually asked me, what do you do? Like, what kind of content do you make? He explained in 2 sentences exactly what I do. He's like, well, he just helps people live a better life with fitness and Jesus and tries to help a lot of the younger kids walk a life if they're lost. And I'm like,
man, dude, that's like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Because it's like, Jordan, he's our location pastor, someone I'm fortunate that came into my life. Has been a mentor for me in a couple small groups. But he was like talking about hero on a mission, like making these visions, these goals, or affirmations. And so 5 years ago, he made these things and wrote them out. And it's relating to you. But he was basically like, I want to be a person who does things that are hard. I want to be a person who changes the temperature of the room. I want people like to see the way I walk with like Jesus, all these things.
That's good.
And so, but 5 years later, they're at a birthday thing where everyone says a nice thing about the person whose birthday it is. And he's like, usually I don't like it, but people went around and said all these things I wrote down 5 years ago about me. And it was the coolest moment. It's like everything you're trying to do, someone just literally in 2 sentences said that, and it made you feel like, wow. When someone else says it, because like me and you, people like us, we're very hard on ourselves, and even though the Lord gives us grace and most other people give us grace, sometimes it's hard for ourselves to give us grace or realize the things we're like working on.
100%, and it's not easy. It's
not
easy.
Man, I feel like we're 100% before. I don't know. In the next couple months, I have to get another episode, but I want to dive into a couple more topics. But I know we're getting deep into it. So something I think growing up with multiple brothers, now growing as a man, growing in your faith, growing with others. We can dive into is kind of having a brotherhood versus being that what this generation is pushing, the lone wolf, the winter arc.
Oh my God.
So I want to hear your opinion. I actually just posted, but first kind of post of the new kind of content I want to post personally. I've kind of come through with a breakthrough, but of the community though, the importance of community, especially as a believer.
100%, and this is such a complicated topic. It's so I kind of actually think it's simple too at the same time. I think it's complicated in that what has caused us to have the lack of masculinity, the abundance of passivity inside of men, and what people might call weak men, and women are needing more stronger men, is a bunch of complex issues put together from society, from fruit of us having a bunch of basically getting whatever we want, which if you give any person whatever they want, they become a little bit self-entitled and expect that consistently and having things given to them. But in the real world, men aren't just given things. You have to work for them. It's relationship dynamics with the rise of the feminine movement. And I mean that from, because I love women. They're absolutely amazing. If you walk with Jesus, you understand that there's an equality there that is like no other. However,
we play different roles.
We play different roles, and that's all right. And on top of that, that movement suppresses the need of men to some degree. It has an effect on what men are actually able to do inside of relationships. A bunch of other stuff that we can't even see. Spiritual battles. Whatever the cause might be, I believe that the healing of that is very, very simple. Jesus, brotherhood, the end. I don't think it goes any deeper than that. Sure, you can you could read this book, or maybe you could get this therapist. Maybe you could build this specific relationship or do this specific course, sure. But you put a man under Jesus in brotherhood with men, whether you're sitting around a fire or sitting in a Bible study, and you are conversating on how to walk in life as a man of God, continually sharpening one another like the word calls us to in Proverbs. You will get better. You will get where you need to go. And it comes from simple conversations like, all right, let's say I'm in a relationship, right? We've been married for 6 years.
Yeah.
Right? And I come to you and I talk to you about a bit of an issue at our Bible study. And I'm like, hey man, I want to talk to you about something I was dealing with my wife. I'm not really sure what I did wrong or what's going on. Let me talk to you about it, man. You're like, oh yeah, bro, I got you. So like we're sitting on a couch, man, and she just leans over and she asks me, if I died today, how long would it take you to, get married again? What do you think I should say?
That's a weighty question. So do you want to answer that?
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah, if I said that to you, what do you think?
Man,
your response is already telling so much.
Wow, got me stumped here. But I got to think on this one. So
exactly
give me
the
seconds.
point I'm trying to get across.
Yeah,
that's what I would be in. But you know what? What would she do? She expected an answer, man. She did, and I had to give it to her, man. So I said, I would just never marry, right? It was the best times. Her response, well, I mean, you got to marry sometime. It's not going to bother me at all.
Yeah, right? But if you give the other answer, how could you ever do that?
Exactly, right. Now, let's say a man's walking on his own. He has no one to reflect on this answer, but of course, basically walking through that, there's almost not a perfect answer. You're basically starting an argument somehow. And he just sits in that shame. I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know how to.
Versus sharing with someone.
Yeah,
Versus like, your boys come to you with the problem.
Yeah.
And then they like tell it to you, or the one guy tells it to everyone, and everyone's like stumped.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, maybe, men sometimes can be foolish, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, at least seeing that all the foolishness is like, it's not just me,
It's not just me. It's not just me. And that's the point of that's the part and the problem, I believe, of the lone wolf. You make it out to be just you when in reality it's not. And if you look at a wolf pack,
if you don't surround yourself.
If you don't surround yourself, because all right, who lasts longer, the lone wolf or the one that's walking with the pack? You imagine a pack of wolves walking through the winter forest, and you got a wolf stranded all by itself, walking through to the same destination with no one surrounding it, and a bear comes up.
Yeah.
Who's gonna win, the bear or the lone wolf? I mean, if the lone wolf's fast enough, maybe, but bears are pretty fast. They're very strong. Then you got a pack of wolves. Probably got a higher chance of surviving, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get picked off. And we need other men. We need other men to sharpen us. We need it. It is a necessity. It is the cure-all in being all. And maybe some will be a little bit stronger on masculinity and strength. At least we're moving in a better direction instead of being weak and passive and pushed over.
Yeah. And I think that biblical masculinity is like where you really need to, like, if the word says it, like, implement it, otherwise I think there's that middle ground. I think the middle ground is the key. Like, let's not all just be like these like tough men who can't cry, who can't be vulnerable. Like, you're never going to have like a successful or maybe happy marriage because you can't open up and grow and trust each other. But also we can't just be puddles of water on the floor for 24 hours. Chris Williamson says that. And it's like, so you got to find that, hey, how can I be emotional and vulnerable? And then when the time comes, I show up, I protect, I provide, I'm the man, but also I can be vulnerable and emotional.
Yes. And you need that. And what's interesting is when she's initially attracted to you, she's not attracted to the soft side in most cases. She's usually attracted to the harder side of you, the masculine side of you, seeing you lead or going after your mission and the passion you have for that. And you would want someone who would probably notice that in you.
Yeah.
And have you ever heard that human relationships between men and women is a lot like crabs?
Crabs.
Yes, like crabs. It's a very interesting take. But so whenever crabs mate with one another, the male not only has to fight for her, then once he wins, whenever they mate, he has to take off his shell. There's an element of that taking off his shell and exposing himself vulnerability to her, where he is exposed. He is softer.
So once she wins, he wins, or like
whenever he wins. So it's like
whenever that relationship becomes like
solid. Yeah, in comparison for a man, it would be like you quote unquote, you win the girl. You win the girl, right? You win the one that you want. You guys are dating, and now you guys get married. You go to the aisle, and you guys are you're one. You're able to go behind closed doors, and she's going to see a side of you that no one will ever see. Because out there, that softer side of you, the world's going to crush that side of you.
Yeah.
They're going to step on that side of you. They're going to run over that side of you. And if you don't have that harder side of you to be able to stand strong and stand firm, whether that's in your faith, in your walk as a man, in work, you're going to get pushed around. And she likes the hard side because that's what she was initially attracted to, seeing you go after a mission, whatever that might look like. She also needs the soft side too, though.
That's where trust is built.
Yes, and I've been in a relationship where she used that against me, the softer side of me. I opened up the soft side, and I ignored and pushed aside the fact that was continually being used against me. That was my own mistake. But like you said, trust is the foundation of all of it. I mean, you have to be able to trust them with your shell off, because if they're going to stab you when you got that shell off, it ain't the person you want to be with.
Yeah, I was talking to my mentor about this, and he was like, you can't be vulnerable with everyone.
Yeah.
You have to be selective about what and who you're vulnerable with. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a very wise thing. He's very wise. He's like, I mean, what a blessing that he came into my life. That's a whole nother story. But basically, he was telling me that. And so I think that shell, you got to find a brotherhood that you can take that shell off with as well.
Yeah, that's
so not
good.
just that future female or like that future. I mean, 100% you should be able to come to her with everything. We talked about this with the episode with Brandon, but he was like, I can go to her with everything, even just like anything, anything, literally.
Anything, it doesn't matter what it is.
With the guys that you're going to surround yourself with, like, you should be able to go to them with your insecurities, with the things you're dealing with, and there's no judgment. It's like your soft shell, and like at the end of the day, it's like it's a different support than the woman, but it's the same thing where it's like, I think it's more like an iron sharpens iron.
It's an iron sharpening
as it says,
iron.
I think it's Proverbs 27:17.
That's correct.
But it's iron sharpens iron in that situation. And JP, who I already mentioned in this pod, but he also, I don't believe that's a relationship verse. I believe that's a brotherhood verse.
I believe so too.
And he explains that as well. But I think a woman and a man's relationship is even more vulnerable.
It's
and
very
deeper.
vulnerable. And we have to be careful expecting a woman to sharpen us the way men sharpen us.
Yeah.
And I've done that myself. They're not the same. It's not the same. And it shouldn't be. That's okay. God made us a
Different
little
roles,
bit differently. We
different
have different
friendships,
roles.
different relationships.
Right. And she probably has some ability to do stuff, but like
Probably
you said,
honestly could push you further than the men can, but in a different way.
In a completely different way, right? I mean, we'll do a lot for women. We will do a lot for women. And
We're called to die for them.
literally.
As Jesus died for the church.
Exactly. So that's a sacrifice. That's laying down one's life. And your brotherhood, though, I mean, there are some things that you're not going to talk to your wife about. And that if you do talk to her about it, not only will you maybe get in trouble, you also might not get the response you might need as a man. Because
What do you think those things are? I'm actually interested because I
this
feel
is
like
so deep. It's like, one, how to deal with problems with a woman. How do men respond to these things?
okay, that one I would agree with.
Because I used to think going to other women would be the case, but you ask a
can't do
woman,
that.
where do you want to eat? Well, I don't know. I'm not really sure. Where do you want to eat? Let's go here. No, I don't want to do that. It's some women aren't like that. The masculine side of them, the decisive side of them, might be more inclined to know the answer to that question, but a lot of people don't. The question is not really the point. It illustrates they don't always know exactly what they want, but they do know that you should know what they want, or at least this is what they want in their mind. They want you to know what they want without them having to say what they want. And they want this every single time. And we know this because I'm talking to you right now. This is the reality. Now, if I go up to my girl and I'm like, hey, babe, look, I'm going to ask you a question, all right? Before I ask, though, you know what you want, right? And what you really want is that you want me to know what you want. Even though I'm going to ask you this, you might know exactly what restaurant, for example, staying on the same topic that you want to go to, but you're not really going to give me an answer. Because you want me to know you well enough to know where you want to go. Am I right? No? What do you mean? I don't know.
Yeah, well,
all right.
You're having a situation like this. Last night. But, like, I do agree. That's, like, one of the only things. Because I would say you should almost be able to take everything to your spouse. Except for, like, and there's things you're going to, like, there's going to be conflict you're going to bring to each other. But it's, like, certain things like that you don't know how to handle. And, like, that maybe you've brought to her. There's just like a difference. How do I handle this to the guys?
Yep.
And
How do I
hearing,
handle it?
not even hearing like, oh, this person said this, let's take this. But it's just like, okay, for me, it's fortunate that I have like a group of guys around me where it's 7 of us, and you can get 7 different perspectives. They could all be terrible.
Yeah, they could.
But maybe there's some insight like, oh, I haven't thought of that. That's a good perspective.
It's a good perspective.
And the odds are, I'm not going to lie, if you have 7 different perspectives of guys that are in kind of the same situations of you or like different situations than you but same kind of walks of life, that there's going to be different ones and that you can probably get something out of it that you didn't think of.
Exactly. You're going to get exactly where you ought to go.
Yeah.
With God's word as the foundation and the way we ought to walk, if you got 7 men who are also married, walking in their marriages, dealing with issues, some have been married longer, some have been married not as long, that is wise counsel for you to go to and ask questions about relationships. It is. It is. I mean, you can also go to 7 other guys who are single, but the context is not the same. Yeah. And here's the question. If you're trying to build a business, do you go to your wife for advice on that? Maybe she works at, I don't know, she does hair and she's really good at it.
Yeah.
She's amazing at it. She's the most famous person here in Tampa. No one can beat her when it comes to putting or doing hair for women. But you go to her for advice on how to grow your pallet built business with wood. And is she going to know what to do? Probably not, right?
But I do have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of relates to a topic I was talking about with a couple buddies. So let's say you and your spouse are in the same industry, right?
Okay.
Let's say you guys have separate businesses. You're doing the exact same thing, fitness coaching, or something like that. Fitness coaching, online coaching, whatever it is. And now they're both kind of kicking off their career, or like you're both kicking off your career. What would you say in a situation where like one person's receptive to getting advice and like learning from the other, whereas vice versa, like the other person's not receptive and getting advice? Like how do they, like, How
do
would
they
you
fix that?
navigate that?
Okay, well,
Like, how do you navigate a situation where, like, you're doing the same thing, you're both kind of in the starting stages,
we're married or we're dating?
you're dating.
Okay, if we're dating, I probably wouldn't date her, and I'm just being honest with you. That's a red flag for me, and it's a red flag for me because submission rolls in a lot of different ways. Most of the time, I would say that. However, I'm gonna dig into it first. What's the context? Is she not following my lead, or am I not following her lead, and why?
No, it's not really a lead thing. It's like they're doing their own thing.
Okay.
And
I could be doing online coaching. She could run a clothing business that's also fitness oriented.
yeah, I'm not gonna dive. Okay, I won't dive into this scenario too much more, but I want to. Yeah, but basically, I guess I get what you're saying, and that kind of stems from. We'll talk about this, but basically, I don't know if I can lay it out too much.
Okay, so I'll ask this question: was it because the dynamic matters? Was the woman that I'm dating in this scenario, is she not following my lead, or am I not following hers or advice?
It's hard to. She's not following your lead, but it's not really a lead. It's like you both have your separate online fitness coaching businesses. She has her mentors, you have your mentors. She doesn't want to take maybe the advice. She's not quite open to the advice you have to say, but you might not have the proof that yours is working either.
Then she shouldn't listen to me.
She shouldn't listen to you.
No, she shouldn't. No, even if we're married, because I don't have the proof.
Yeah.
I don't have the evidence. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's like faith is the evidence of the things that are unseen, right? So there's an evidence part that we all overlook.
Yeah.
This is in the word and we all overlook it. Evidence is proof.
Yeah.
I don't have the proof. So what I'm arguing with her over something that I actually don't even have any credibility on. It's like, hey, babe, you should go this direction. Okay. Yeah, I understand that. Why? Well, I just think it's best for you. Oh, have you done it in your business and it worked really well? No.
Yeah.
I'm kind of still figuring it out. She shouldn't listen to me. There's no way.
I agree. Yeah. So it's funny. I don't know if I'll keep that in or not, but this was a very specific topic that was brought up last night. My boys and I tried to beat around the bush, so I don't know if I'll keep this in or not.
That's all right.
But basically, I agree. I think the same. I think when you're walking, it's in a lot of relationships, and maybe it comes from a place of insecurity between the two people. But anything you do, like if you're going out to the golf course and the man's trying to teach the woman, for some reason in relationships, it seems a lot harder for those relationships to learn versus, if some instructor told her, she's going to listen.
Yes.
Versus if maybe the guy's friend told her, she's going to listen. I don't know where that comes up. You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. We're getting into the deeper issue though, and this is what I was stemming from before. One of the qualities of masculinity is argumentativeness.
Yeah.
It's just a masculine quality. Doesn't mean it's female or male. Female. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about
masculine.
It's a masculine quality. You are stronger in your convictions, and you're less willing to pivot and just submit and follow. Right? That's feminism promotes women to be more masculine or grab onto more masculine traits.
These days, yes.
Yes, these days, right? I'm not going to date someone who embodies that. I'm just not going to. I'm also not going to marry someone who embodies that for two reasons. One, it won't work.
Yeah.
I did it. Didn't work. That's why we didn't go together. And she might be different now because she might have realized that it didn't work for either. So I have nothing against her. However, that was a big problem for us. She was not going to submit to my will. She wasn't.
Yeah.
And in that will being under the headship of Jesus did not make a difference. It didn't. And I'll give you a perfect example. Finances, right? So this is an area that I understand because my best friend is absolutely amazing in finances. He's a finance major. He works for Exxon. He understands money. He's saved a bunch of money and didn't have to make a lot of money, but he's going to be a millionaire because he understood and followed the system that works. And he had an education on it. He taught me what I needed to do to make my financial situation better, regardless of how much money we made. We knew how to make money together. We're very good at it. However, I understood what we needed to do so the money would last and grow, getting us out of debt, building a savings, being able to buy a home, invest in different cars, whatever the case may be in the life that we would like. We created a plan. We sat down, we broke it down, prayed over it, agreed on it. Her actions completely said the opposite. Spent $3,000 without even talking to me about it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's not the only one, but it's an example.
No, it's tough. It's manipulation.
It is, and it's
Because
like
manipulation is when your actions don't align with what you say.
they don't. But then you also are aiming to make me feel bad for those decisions. And be a man, dude. Listen,
Gaslighting.
right? Yeah. So, but that's my own fault for getting into the relationship, and also because it's on me more than it is on her. I chose that partner.
Yeah, and you probably missed the red flags because you were blinded by emotion.
And really sex. That for me, that was the biggest part. And emotion was part of it too, but sex builds on that. However, I understand now that if I'm dating a woman and more intentional in walking with Jesus as our foundation and her having that similar fear of God and us moving in that direction, submission and feminine qualities are what I want. And that does not mean that she just listens to every single thing that I say, because our example that we just broke down is perfect. I don't know what I'm talking about, so don't listen to me. Yeah. All right. I can give you an opinion if you're asking for it, but I've also never done that before. I can't explain it to you. So don't listen to me. If it's, I'll go figure out, I can do that too and help you get a dependable source. Sure. But leadership is also serving in the word. It's not just telling everyone what to do.
Yeah. Let's flip it. Let's say now your business goes off. You're making $40K a month. Mm-hmm. Now you go to give that advice. What do you think? You think she listens? Do you think she should be open to it now? Or do you think it's still just I think it's a very hard line to walk when you're both in the same industry. You're both pursuing the same things. He has more validity and credibility now? Or is it still just like, do you want to just separate work from personal?
So I don't think it matters.
Okay.
And that's at least my opinion. So if I'm in a relationship and she's not taking my advice, I would probably take it personally years ago, but now I don't think it matters because people take advice with a grain of salt anyways, and often they ask for it.
I think you should, yeah.
Yeah, like people in the gym come up to me all the time like, hey, what do I do to build muscle? It's pretty simple. Eat a lot and progressive overload and don't program hop. That's really it. Just do the same thing over and over again and get better at it and eat. There's nothing else that goes through that equation. Yeah.
Eat everything your protein goals, eat enough calories, hit the gym X amount times a week, follow your split.
Follow your split. Exactly.
Train intensely.
Make sure you're progressive overloading. They're very simple principles to follow, but that's not something that they're going to come and ask me that same question or go ask someone else that same question again. That could be the case in the conversation with my wife. She might just be seeking validation for a decision she's already made. She might be curious about my opinion on it and not really just want to act it out anyways because her mentors are telling her something else and she doesn't want to feel guilty about investing time and respecting their opinion, though she still respects you. It doesn't mean she doesn't respect me. It's
like that she's learning from different mentors.
Exactly. And if they're leading her to a point where she's not actually growing, at a certain point, she might come to the end of that and then be like, all right, you know what, babe, I'm actually really open to what you're saying. Like, I'm done with this. I can't do it anymore. But that's not going to go well if you didn't take my advice the first time I gave it to you, so I'm not going to give it to you now. I would just be understanding in a situation like that. Also because I'm making $40,000 in my business right now. We're obviously doing good financially. What's the extra money going to do better for our lives? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
100%.
Bills are all paid. You're good. Kids are good.
Yeah, I wanted to hear your opinion because you're kind of in that industry. So I think we want to pivot to one thing I want to just dive into is there's a few questions. We're not going to get to all of them that I like to ask on this podcast, and that's just like part of where I've wanted the process to go. Is it more just a flow and things we're going to touch on, things we're not. But I want to dive into one, discipline, but two, habits, routines in your life that what does a day in your life look like? What are some habits, disciplines that maybe the audience can pick from, take with a grain of salt, try out for themselves?
Okay.
And a day in Zack.
A day in
Bowden? Is it
Bowden? Yeah.
See, I keep mixing it up.
It's all Bowden. Like on the announcers for football, they would say Bowden. But
I think that W just messes it up.
I mean, if you look at it, it's Bowden.
Bowden.
It's Bowden. But
Bowden.
Bowden. But
no, but what's a day in your life look like? What are some habits, routines that you've implemented that have been big to keep that discipline? And then how are you able to kind of transfer that to your clients' lives? I'll start it off just your day.
Yeah, simplest answer to the question though, structure and consistency, and then you protect it because you have to keep it. You have to guard it because everything will try to throw it off. Then they'll respect it.
Yeah.
So what I do on a daily basis is I wake up at 6:00. I take about 45 minutes to get ready. That's shaving my head. That's brushing my teeth, weighing myself, making my coffee. I make my bed every single morning, and I set my computer up. I get dressed. I do the same thing in the same order every single morning.
Yeah.
I don't think about it.
Was that bred into you in the Air Force, or was that just
No.
So that's just like,
I mean, the Air Force
built that.
Yeah, I just built it.
morning
The Air
routine.
Force did.
Read some of those things.
It did, but I don't think for me, it wasn't a foundational, like, I'm going to do this because the Air Force taught me. It was more so,
This works.
it works, and I know that willpower is something that fleets throughout the day. It goes down, it doesn't go up. So to make that last longer, I don't want to have to make more decisions every single day.
Ooh, autopilot.
Yes, all autopilot. The more decisions you have to make, ultimately, the less willpower and the less energy you're going to have at the end of the day. When you typically we fall the most at the end of the day. It's when men fall when they're all alone and sit in their room.
Yeah.
No one's there and the TV's on. You see a good looking girl and then thoughts start coming in. But I have more energy to take care of the things that I need to and stay in line with the light of Christ by doing these things. So I don't want to think about these things.
Ooh.
I just want to go. So every morning I set it up to be able to do that. And it's not always perfect, but this is the way I roll. After I'm done with that, I have my coffee. I sit down and I review yesterday because I have a document that asks me 5 to 6 questions about how I can reflect on yesterday. And I like doing it the next day because it helps me realize what I want to do for today. It's a little bit of both. It's 5 or 6 questions. It's not a lot. How did yesterday go? What would you rate it? How was your productivity? Did it align with your goals? Is today set up? What is the most important priority for today? Write it all out. Is today fully good to go? Yes. Boom. And also there's a question there, how can I improve? And I understand these questions because I answer them every single day. I go into today knowing that yesterday was great, where I can improve, and I am clear on what I need to get done for today. Then I execute because my calendar is already there.
Do you shift the calendar around by reflecting on yesterday ever?
Yes, every time. Almost
Yeah.
every time if I need to. I'm
I'm
getting better at it though. So
do you go to the Lord with your plan? So do you go to the Lord with your plans for the day?
Everything is prayed upon ultimately because I believe prayer is a heart posture. It's not just.
Yeah.
Prayer is a heart posture. We are praying in a way right now. Our spirits are speaking. In this moment right now, we are speaking life. And yes, there is the Heavenly Father. Like
a
we
deeper
need that
prayer.
There is a deeper prayer. However, everything I believe is an act of worship ultimately, and the word supports this. It's not just worshiping
Where your heart's
here.
leaning.
It's where your heart is leaning. So everything I do is submitted unto him, and he understands that. And if I'm not, my prayer continually, especially when I am alone, is for him to continually align with me. People ask me all the time, how can I pray for you? Very often, most of the time, is that I stay in alignment with his will. Not him to mine, me to his. And so those plans, and also understanding that we're human beings and God created us in his image, so we can really think on our own to a good amount, but we ought not to just think on our own, obviously. So it is submitted under him.
I like that. Yeah, I think my mentor was saying that like everything's a prayer. It's like the
Everything is a prayer.
In. Yeah.
Everything is a prayer. And when you realize that and you still do it more often and intentionally in that way, you're praying. Because it's like, oh, I need to pray anymore. You are, just maybe not the way you want to. What do you mean by that? And I think that's something that should be dissected because you might be feeling guilty for not praying and you kind of are in a way because your thoughts are to some degree of prayer. They do speak life and they do exercise themselves outward. Spiritual is very deep. It's very deep when we pay attention to it because everything is spiritual first before it is physical. And I try to do that from a daily perspective too. After I do that for my day, when I get clear on it, I get on my knees and I say the Lord's Prayer. And that's Our Father in Heaven. And I do it from the posture that my mentor taught me how to pray it. Our Father in heaven, respect for our Father in heaven. He is above. There is a reverence here. Hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done. Not my will.
Yeah.
Not my kingdom. Not Zack's glory. Your glory.
Yeah.
Everything I'm doing on social media, everything I do today, as best as I possibly can, align me with that.
Yeah.
And I continue to go through that prayer piece by piece by piece. His provision is over my life, and understanding that what I have and what is given to me is from him. Everything is from him. Lead me not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Every single part of that I'm breaking down in my mind when I say it. And I pretty much say the entire Lord's Prayer all the way through, but I do it on my knees every single morning. It takes me 5 seconds. But I say it out loud and I do it with that heart posture as best as I possibly can. Then I get up and I have my prayer journal, which is more of a journal and a conversation with the Lord, and I write out my prayers. And that's thoughts. It's not...
Thoughts, questions,
curiosity, everything.
Like God's speaking through you through the word, everything.
Prayers for someone if it pops in my mind or something that we may have had a conversation for. And it could literally be just a reflection. It could be anything of that sort. And often it is of reflection.
Yeah.
And then I read the word and I do school in the morning, or I read the word, depending on if I have school, but most of the time I have school. which is all studying the Bible. And I do that for 2 to 3 hours. Then I do lunch, and then I do fitness business for the rest of the day.
Fitness business content.
Yeah, that's usually client work or calls if I have new clients coming in through my assessment process, or I'm interviewing new guys, or I'm creating new programs for them because everything I do for them is custom and hands-on. I'm checking on them, making sure everything's good, and game planning, creating new resources, and then pretty much every single night I'm in the gym filming, connecting with people, creating more content. And
Sweet.
That's from 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. every single day.
Yeah.
Monday through Friday. Saturday is usually a half day, usually. And that's why my days are pretty busy. Every single day is very similar to that.
I want to ask a question that I read this book, Holy Habits, and one of the habits is a Sabbath day. Are you implementing a Sabbath day?
That's my Sunday. That's my Sunday. Yeah,
okay.
Sunday. I would say Sunday and half Saturday. So I learned a long time ago, and this is something I struggled with, but I'm more at peace with it now, that I need more rest than maybe the other person might. And I'm okay with that.
Because you're maximizing your schedule more.
I am literally, and I realize that I'm doing it because at the end of the days when I'm doing those 6 to 6 days, because I didn't realize that the gym, when people go to the gym, do you think of that as work for you?
No, but if you're getting content the whole time, maybe.
Right. And I didn't realize that I was like, oh, I'm actually working. I'm not just working out. I'm not just working on my physique either. I'm working and I'm doing that all at once. It's a lot. So at the end of each day, about 8 o'clock, 7:30, I'm exhausted. I don't want to talk to nobody. My thoughts aren't the same. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm on
100%.
E. I'm on E. And not from a spiritual perspective, but physically I'm done. And I know that I poured into the day.
It's a good feeling, though.
It is.
Every day to feel.
Each day. So then when I get to the weekend on Saturday, and I used to have to take half days on Wednesday because I just couldn't sustain it throughout the week. Now I'm for the most part, I'm good. And Saturdays would come around, and I would want to work the entire day, but I'm like, nah, I actually need to learn how to slow down. I read a book called Elimination of Hurry, great book, and it allowed me to slow down and realize that all of this stuff's going to come to pass eventually. I don't need it to come past now. So I'm allow the Lord to do what he continually does, and I'm just going to rest. And that's my alone time or relationship building. I do some meal prep, which I used to group inside of my work throughout the week, but I couldn't be as productive because it just took time away from other areas. But now, because I'm carnivore, meal prep takes like an hour and a half, and I'm done. Maybe 2.5 hours if you include driving to the grocery store and coming out. And that's it. Rest of the time, I'm just trying to do what I can to just relax or enjoy life.
Dang, I love it. Yeah, I wanted to ask that subject on the Sabbath day because this was my second week implementing it. And the belief is that the Lord makes the promise to those who take a Sabbath day that he'll reward those, and that it's kind of in the same sense of tithing that that you can do more with 6 days and giving one to the Lord and taking that to rest, to worship, to do activities you enjoy to do, to really just enjoy the earth that he's created for us.
Yes.
And that you can do more with those 6 days, and he'll bless those and reward those who take that Sabbath day more than you would do with 7. The workaholics, the people who can't stop and give
leaning into
a
that
time.
lone wolf.
Yeah, for the Lord.
Yeah.
And then same with tithing. It's the same principle that the Lord can do more with your 90 than you can do with your 100.
Every single time. And these are facts. They're not just things that people preach. You could be giving it to the wrong church or the wrong organization. It doesn't make a difference. It's the heart posture for you. It does more for you when you're giving than it does for the person in many ways spiritually. And what I think is so interesting, have you heard of, I don't know what countries there are, but there are countries that work 4 days per week and they're off 3.
Oh, I think there's a lot. I know what you're talking about, but how their work is more productive or they get more done.
Yes.
And it's like this America in a general sense. I don't want to generalize everything, but are very 5-hour work weeks. It's 5-day work weeks. And there's not, it's a lot of these rules are made because they've been rules for so long.
They have.
And we don't just stop and look at them as actual intellectual humans and be like, is there really an advantage to this, or is this just how it's always ever been?
It's always, and what's interesting is, I don't know who the famous person was, but it was a wise man. He said that eventually we're going to get to the point where we're only going to work 3 or 4 days per week, and I see that in the next decade. This was 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
Look at us now. And you said a 5-day work week. I would argue that most people work 6. At least from an entrepreneurial standpoint.
Oh, entrepreneurial? Yeah. I would argue that most are doing something for their work every day.
Yes.
And that's where it's so this new Sabbath day of mine, it's very hard because I love the podcast. I love it. But part of the Sabbath day is I don't look at the podcast. I don't edit. I don't film. And it's man, sometimes I'm I really would like to get this done right now. But being able to have the self-control to be Missing one day of a post, missing one day is not going to
behind.
change everything.
Nothing's
Nothing's going to change. Guess what?
Yep.
No, that's super cool. Diving into that habit. The last subject I actually really want to dive into, so we'll dive into it, is
Let's go.
Pursuing this Masters of Apologetics. So you saw the book on my stand over there, Tactics by Greg, I think it's Kokel.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, yeah, something I'm diving into a little bit more, and something we talked about at the gym, just being able to fully understand everyone's point of view, being solely like hear everyone out, but also being strong in your ideals and your foundations. And so what led you to wanting to get into apologetics? What's your journey been like?
So I was in Ohio, actually. Wow. I went to go home so I could conduct my sister's wedding.
Yeah.
I was going to be the officiate, and I was, and it was great. It was the first time I ever did it. And I ended up being alone for that when I shouldn't have been. And I couldn't sleep. Occasionally I deal with insomnia throughout the year.
Yeah.
And I was staying with my sister's. So I went down in the basement and I turned the AC on to like 60. And because I usually like sleeping when it's cold. And I just watched apologetics videos. I ended up getting on YouTube. Yeah. And I just fell in love. This was Cliff Kanikley, I think I'm saying.
Nettle.
Yeah.
Someone said it yesterday and they pronounced it correctly, but I don't know. Yeah.
And he understands that everyone messes it up. I feel like he does it on purpose sometimes. It's like,
yeah.
But I loved the passion he had, and I dove into other people who also did apologetics. And it was such a beautiful process to learn how people would articulate the reason behind our faith. And William Lane Craig writes a beautiful book. It's called Reasonable Faith. And if you listen to him, he's a genius. And when he breaks stuff down, it's very logical. There's a lot of heart behind it still. And when he's doing it, he bases everything on first. There's two levels that we come to when it comes to defending our faith. And this is where the passion for me started to come into it. Was first, witness from the Holy Spirit. This is number one.
Yeah.
This is not a logical decision. This is an emotional and spiritual decision. And it doesn't make it not true. It doesn't make it not real. Yes. Right. But faith is not blind either. And this is the difference between when some people are like, all right, you got to believe in Jesus because, you just got to have faith in him. Okay, why?
Yeah, what's their faith is matched by, well, I mean, we do have evidence. We have the word, right? We have the word, but we also have that 500 people saw Jesus after he died and resurrected.
Yes.
And on top of that, every single atheist, every single religion notices the day of Jesus' birth. Every time they write the date.
All of these add up to the logical case for Christ. And what is so interesting about it, though, is, do you remember in the Word where Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do you guys think I am?" And I believe they responded, some say you're Elijah, some say you're, the prophet to come, and a bunch of different responses. And he says, "But who do you say that I am?" And Peter says that you're the Christ.
Yeah.
And he says that this has not been given to you by understanding and knowledge and just heard it. You have been given this by the Father. Those that come into understanding of who Jesus is from the Holy Spirit. This is not, and I'll explain it in this way, because then some people say, okay, does that mean that those that don't understand Christ have just not been shown by the Holy Spirit? No. It's not what it means. Peter accepted that belief to be true. He submitted himself under it in its reality. He didn't deny it, right? A person can say to you, I wouldn't say wind. You're going to build muscle by lifting and progressive overload.
Yeah.
And it could be true, but you don't have to believe it. Someone could say the earth is round and you could say, nah, it's flat. You don't have to believe it. God could show you who he is and you could be like, nah, I'm good. I don't want that. I don't want that. And it's the same thing. Here's the point though. For people who are non-believers, those who haven't come to Christ, understanding that might be a little difficult if you've never experienced that witnessing.
Understanding the Spirit, you mean?
Yes, because their spiritual discernment's not there yet. And that's where reason comes in to plant a seed.
Yes, and I've been diving deep into John 10 right now. And I definitely don't know the scripture by heart, but it talks about how his sheep know his name. Or like enter, hear his voice. Like we know his voice as believers, as people of Christ who have accepted Christ into our heart. So I think a lot of the times people that haven't accepted Christ in their heart aren't going to hear the Spirit as
They're
much.
not. They don't have the spiritual discernment. And I think of it as like girls. This is the example you and I talk about.
Yeah.
Did you ever see an issue before with looking at girls the way you did before? No, never. But now you do. You feel convicted about it. It's a little weird, right?
Yeah.
You never felt that way before, right? And did you sit down and read a specific verse that eventually made you feel convicted about that? Or did it kind of just start happening?
Just kind of started happening, and then you meet people. It just happened over time.
It just happens over time.
And
And
that's one of the biggest things. I was talking to my buddies at the Bible study last night. Is I was like, just because I feel convicted of something doesn't mean that you're going to feel convicted or that you're necessarily going to stop. It's like we're all on our different journeys, and we're all going to be convicted of different things based on like our relationship with the Spirit, how the Spirit's working in us. So I was like, I think we were talking about smoking weed.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, like if I smoked weed, not that I ever really have a desire to, but I would feel convicted in a sense that, I don't know, for me, it doesn't feel like something, I just know I'd feel convicted of it.
Yes. Yeah. I understand that. You're aware of that, which is good.
And same with the shirt off. I was like, that was something I felt convicted of the other day.
Yes. You feel
but you
convicted
guys,
of it.
like, there's nothing to say that I should tell you should feel convicted with your shirt off. It's just personally, I did. You guys going to lift at the gym with your shirts off, no big deal.
I think that's the question we all have to ask ourselves is if someone comes to me like, hey, should I should or should not do it? And I probably would have done a better job at asking this question initially when you brought it up. Do you feel convicted about it?
Yeah.
Do you feel convicted about it? Yeah, I do. Why? How's that? Dive into it. Move away from it. Well, what do you want to do? My conviction and my walk is not the same.
Yeah, because I had someone come to me who was convicted of it, and I was like, I've never felt that conviction.
Yes.
Next thing you know, I did feel it. So
It's
it was
worked
like
that way too.
It does, because it might open up with, I don't know. And so, yeah.
We're ultimately meant to be more like him, and that's the Spirit is the Spirit works the way it works, and it does work. But I will say this to kind of put a cap on it. Reason is part of building the faith in a deeper way. It can also be a seed for people who do not believe, because a person,
It's how you look at it.
it definitely is how you look at it, because some people are closed off to it. I talked to a guy the other day in the locker room, and he was like, I see you wear the shirts all the time, and and I always ask pretty bluntly to people, do you believe in Jesus or do you walk with him? I don't beat around the bush. It's a very straightforward question. Not really. I'm like, whatever reason. What is that? I try to understand why. And a lot of times it's because they've seen other Christians explaining stuff that just doesn't make any sense and doesn't follow. I'm like,
or it's hypocritical, or
yes. He's like, I've had people come to me and be like, if I do anything in Jesus' name, like anything will happen. It's like, I'm like, yeah, it's not really actually what it says. It's not the way it really works. It's really his will be done and praying according to his name. Not, hey, Lord, he's not a genie. I would like this brand new car in Jesus' name. Amen. It's not the way it works.
Not
right?
quite.
Not quite.
He does want us to bring his worries, our satisfaction, our good, our bad to him.
Yep.
But it's not like just a genie in a bottle where it's like, I want this, Lord, please provide it. It's like, Lord, if this is in line with your will, I would like to bring this relation.
Yes, it's all under his will. I mean, you that's literally it. And I broke that down with him, but I said, I tried to explain to him a little bit more about how Christ is logical and not illogical as much as people try to make it out to be. And I explained it to him this way. I said, how do you know George Washington was the first president of the United States? He was like, it's historical evidence. He said it in different words, but that's what he said. And I was like, what about Abraham Lincoln? He was like, yeah. I'm like, how do you know he had an impact on slavery? Historical evidence. That's interesting. All right. And you never seen him or anything like that. He's like, yeah. Eyewitness testimony. There's a bunch of people who've seen it. Okay. Now, we have printing press and a lot of other things that will help us. People documented stuff a little bit different then and way better. And I explained it to him this way. No one, and I mean no one, has more historical evidence to support their case than Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
For his life, death, and resurrection. Not one person in all of mankind. Now, I said, I'll be completely straightforward to you. This is understanding the times. In George Washington's time, Abraham Lincoln, the rest of the presidents that we all see that led up to the president that we have now. Over time, there's even more data on each of them. There's more information and more media coverage on LeBron than there is from Michael Jordan. Why? Because it's bigger now. We have social media. We can
Yeah.
output stuff on Twitter as well. There's more evidence in that way. However, continue to go back to Jesus' time when they didn't have the printing press. Nobody was drawing pictures the way they draw pictures and documenting stuff. They basically memorized stuff and they wrote stuff down. That's about it. Yet in comparison to the time, no one has the same case for their legitimacy of their life than Jesus Christ. Why is that? Why is that? Why did so many people, why are we talking about him right now, 2,000 years later? And he was like, well, dang. Like, I never thought about that. I'm like, yes, the case for Christ is logical. Read the Gospels, see how historically accurate they are, and you'll find that they are historically accurate. You can read that as well.
It's perfect. The word is like, it's literally perfect.
It's literally perfect. He's like, what about the contradictions? It's like, if you study enough, you'll realize they're not contradictions. They all tell the same story. It's different perspectives. And honestly, if they were the same perspectives, it'd be a little weird.
Yeah. And that's what JP said even. He was like, what's your great-great-grandmother's name? Do you know anything about her? No. Why 2,025 years later do we know everything about Jesus? We have documentation of him. But you can't even remember you don't even know your great-great-grandmother's name.
You don't.
And so
I have none. If I digged enough, maybe if I asked my mom's mom.
Yeah, you got on like your family tree thing.
Right.
But yeah, I think that along with this, like, I think it's Apostle Paul, who was not a believer, correct? And he saw that Jesus resurrected. He saw he was actually against Christians. He
was killing them.
He supported a Christian getting murdered or whatever. But seeing Jesus Christ resurrected, he became not a disciple, but he started to spread the word. He spread the gospel, spread the story of like Jesus' life. And just that alone, one of the 500, the guy was killing Christians or persecuting them. And seeing Jesus change his life to where he spread the
I find
gospel.
that to be one of the strongest cases for a person to understand the legitimacy of Christianity. Put it this way. Why do we do what we do now from a worldly perspective for men? Status, money, fame, women. It's usually something inside of that realm. That's why we do what we do. We want more of whatever that is. Otherwise, we kind of just don't do it. Oh, what's your motivator? I want to look good for my peers, recognition, something about that. Oh, I want to feel good about myself. Behind that is kind of a crux of other people seeing that you're doing good.
Yeah.
To some degree. Paul had everything he needed. Everything he needed in his side of his religion is he was going to persecute Christians because they were going the wrong way. He had a great official position, making money, doing his thing, fame in his own way. And has an encounter with Jesus. He's blind, goes to another place, gets prayed for, hands put on top of him, or laid on him. He's prayed for, and he can see again. For 3 years, he goes away, studies under the Spirit of Jesus, and he learns the correct way. Then he starts encountering with other people, and he comes back out as a man who was walking in everything he had and needed in everything he had from a money perspective, fame perspective, in persecuting Christians, but he was also doing the right thing. So he had the affirmation of every other person around him. Like, oh, you're doing the right thing. They're the wrong way. Then he turns around, starts preaching Christianity. The people he's preaching to are like, yo, what are you doing? You used to try to kill us. I don't know if I could trust you. So he had to go through their resistance. Now the people who used to that he was with trying to kill Christians, they don't like him. He continually stands his ground and becomes one of the largest advocates for the faith all the way to his death.
In jail, correct?
In jail, multiple times. In jail, and then he got killed. He was beheaded because he believed in Jesus and he fought for Jesus. Now listen, and here's the point. I said this to the kid when we were in the locker room as well. Rarely will a person, if you're lying about something and they're about to cut your head off and you know it, and they ask you the last time, look, tell us the truth. Was he the Christ or not? Do you believe in him or not? And you know they're about to cut your head off. Even if it's the truth, you don't think you'd just be like, hey, you know what? He didn't exist. You know, you know what? My bad. Yeah. I was just doing it because I wanted. I don't know what I was doing it for. I know y'all trying to kill me right now. I don't want to do it. Soon as it's over, you're probably gonna go to your boys and be like, oh, man, you know I believe in Jesus, man. Just don't tell nobody. But like, I believe in Jesus. No. He went to the grave going, no, Jesus existed. He was real. He was alive. He was killed on the cross. You guys actually killed him. And he came back to life 3 days later. And I had an encounter with him directly, and I seen him with my own eyes. And he taught me everything that he taught me. And I don't care what you think of me. So much so that you can kill me right now, because I know, because of how real he was and is, I'm going to go to heaven, and which is greater. You can't beat that kind of faith. And a lot of the apostles died for the same thing. Peter, Elijah was taken away. But they were persecuted and literally beheaded. People were cut in half for their faith.
Yeah.
And they went to the grave fighting for that.
Yeah.
Not for fame, not for money. Today's a little bit different, but then no. Not for fame, money, girls, none of that. They didn't get it. They got the opposite, actually.
No, that's amazing. And that's like some great insight into, I guess, your journey into apologetics, and looking forward to maybe having you on again. But I think that's gonna conclude the episode right there. We could literally talk for hours and hours.
Forever,
I think,
bro.
for sure.
A day.
No, for sure.
A whole day. Yeah.
But any last remarks, last words kind of to the audience? Drop your socials after you give that advice to the audience, or anything you like want to say.
1 Timothy 4:8. For bodily exercise is profitable for little, but godliness is profitable for all things, having promise of the life that now is and of that which is to come. Exercising is good. It is profitable. Just for a little, you need it. Walking in a spirit of self-control and taking care of your health and inspiring others to do the same is very important, and we're called to do that as Christians, taking care of the temple where the Holy Spirit resides inside of us. Also, not however, also becoming more like him, not to earn our way to heaven, because that's done through the sacrifice of Jesus. We can't do that.
Yeah.
But becoming more like him is even more fruitful. It is even more important for the people in the life that you currently have now, and the rewards in the life that you will have in heaven after this time, because you're going to die. Everyone will.
Yeah.
It is a belief that I try to do the best I can under the service of God to live out. Socials, you can follow me on anything on Fit Disciple. I'm Fit Disciple _ and I love fitness and I love Jesus. That's it.
Boom. Zack Bowden. That's the process. Thanks for joining us. Peace.